So for me, veganism has become so much more than a way to just oppose animal cruelty, although that is the central tenet which will always keep me vegan. Over time, veganism has become an indissociable part of my intersectional fight for justice.
If you've ever wondered how eating a cheeseburger contributes to racism, sexism, or any number of other oppressions, today's your lucky day. I've been looking at vegans for quite a while, mostly because every now and then they come out with a sentence that tickles me.
And we've got 60 years or so before the earth is destroyed, mostly because of animal agriculture.
But over the last week or so, I've been dipping my toe into the world of intersectional veganism, the point at which feminism and vegan activism cross. And I'd like to share an overview and some highlights of what I've encountered. While feminists usually stick to the human oppression Olympics, looking at how many different overlapping, marginalized identities someone falls under and how oppressed that makes them, these Vegfems, as I like to call them, seek to expand that system by adding non-human animal as an identity alongside its associated oppression, speciesism. I'll let vegan feminist and sociology lecturer Corey Wren explain. While intersectionality is a theory of black feminism, it can also be applied to understand other complex identities. Consider how a dog's experience is different from that of a human. Consider also how a disabled dog's experience will be markedly different from that of an able-bodied dog in a human supremacist and ableist society. Intersectionality theory asks us to be conscious of differences in experience and the complexities of oppression. Intersectionality is about awareness of difference. Besides my Jack Russell Terrier finally getting a place on the progressive stack, what does that mean for those adopting this approach? Whereas a plain old feminist might be fighting to say,
intersectionality is important. Without it, it's not really feminism. Feminism is for everyone.
Suggesting feminism requires intersectionality to be complete, a vegfem would be fighting to assert that, in order for that intersectionality to be complete or adequate, it must incorporate non-human animals and the speciesism they face. And whereas single-issue vegan activists might say animal liberation is simply their passion and the only thing they want to focus on, a vegfem would argue that, without feminist intersectionality, they won't get anywhere with the cause they care about. And so, even if their personal focus is narrow, intersectionality is mandatory.
So, I get really confused with the vegan community sometimes. Clearly, you know, when you become vegan, you start to see the eyes open to all the problematic things that go into animal cruelty and all those things, and that there's actually systems in place that keep that stuff happening. But so many vegans aren't willing to look at the systems and see that those systems are also oppressing humans as well as animals. Now, if you as a vegan are going to try to overcome animal cruelty and seek animal liberation by using the same systems that actually created that, you aren't really going to get very far.
This is also how they try to recruit any other single-issue activist into intersectionality, and also, by extension, veganism. For many vegfems, the process they see as the root of all oppression is what matters most, and is why they don't separate the treatment of non-humans from the treatment of humans. In other words, why they treat discrimination against animals as an ism alongside racism and sexism. This table, made by a group called World Intersectional Liberation, explains all manifestations of oppression involve members of one group abusing their power to dominate members of another group, which is justified by arbitrary differences that encourages unequal, even cruel, treatment. So they say racism is a person from one race abusing their power to dominate a person from another race. Sexism is men using their power to dominate women. They can be more specific on this one because they don't have to worry about complexities. Men are always on top. Which brings us nicely to their definition of speciesism, when human animals abuse their power to dominate non-human animals. And don't you complain about it. You can't be speciesist against humans. Speciesism is prejudice plus power. And then they show everything that happens in the last two steps of the process as being common to all oppression. I don't think a non-human being less human is as arbitrary as this implies. In any case, because what they care about is the scaffolding they see as shared between all oppressions, they argue the arbitrary acceptance of any one instance implicitly approves of the fundamental process. This sets a precedent that allows the justification of every instance. What this means is, while a non-intersectional vegan activist may have made their choice because they think veganism is a moral baseline, because all animals want to live, who gave you the right to lock up and kill a living being? An intersectional vegan could choose their lifestyle as part of their dedication to intersectionality, and they needn't necessarily think non-veganism is immoral in and of itself. For the Vegfem, instead of the issue just being the mass exploitation and killing of animals, it's also the thoughts or ideas that this happening and being condoned allows you to think.
Hear me out. 10 seconds and then I'll let you go. I know. That same mentality that makes some people go, black people, we're better than black people, it's the same mentality that allows people to go, my life's more important than that animal. That animal could suffer, I'm not concerned about it. It's the same mentality that some things are above others. All oppression is tied together. And we're fighting that mentality.
When an intersectionalist proselytizes, they can use any injustice you care about as the reason you should support fighting the injustices they care about and get on board with intersectionality. This works on the basis of there supposedly being a shared thought or process at the bottom of all the practices you want to end or systems you want to smash. If any of these oppressions are left standing, the root thought process is still there. And if that's still there, other oppressions can still grow out of it. So, you need to be supportive of everyone's fights, or no one will truly succeed. Or at least that's how it's sold. The implied "you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours" setup normally means that acknowledging a new group identity or oppression to fight will benefit intersectionalists as a whole. Advocates for that one cause become recruiters and supporters for all of their fellow intersectionalists' causes. In return, the new group's sensitivities are accommodated. The intersectionalists stop using certain words, try to stop other people from using them, create safe spaces for the new allies, come up with new hashtags, and so on. This is normally worth it for all involved. Speciesism is different though. This oppression being accepted into their little system would be very good for vegans and the oppressed livestock they care about, which at least one vegan community recognizes, stating on their website that, if we want animal liberation, then we had better build bridges. According to Professor Will Kimlicker, 99% of the intersectional analysis that is done by the left today completely ignores the intersection of species. He adds, I think there's no way for the animal rights movement to possibly succeed without the support from other social justice movements. Our movement consists of humans and our goal won't be achieved if we don't convince other people to join us. How can we do so if we're not considering their struggles, needs, and rights? But this is an awful trade for the rest of the intersectionalists who'd be providing support in return. Sure, they'd get some more people on their side to support their various causes, and, as you've seen, Vegfems are happy to spread intersectionality alongside their animal liberation message. But the trade-off for taking them on means letting in an organic occurrence of something like someone trying to pull an Alinsky Rule 4, trying to make them stick to their own rules about fighting oppression, in order to attempt forcing a major lifestyle change on them.
In this episode, I wanted to talk about feminism and how real feminists are vegan. If you look at the meat, dairy, and egg industry, especially the dairy industry, that they exploit idle female bodies to use for products. The whole industry's basis is on exploiting females for their use. So the people in control exploit female animals. And if we allow this space in our society, it only makes sense that sexism comes out from it. Because if we have an allocated space where sexist mentality of exploiting female animals is allowed, then no wonder we have spaces where it's allowed in society.
Jarring, isn't it? Especially if you're a gamer familiar with feminist criticism of the games industry. When I watched this whole video, it was almost like seeing a human pick up an alien's weapon in a sci-fi movie and turn it back on them. I mean, I can produce satire where I say, hey feminists, why don't you do this thing you'd never ever do, because it follows your rules. Haha. Look, I do it, I'm a better feminist than you. And it can be good for a laugh. But these people are serious. When Vegfems do this, it isn't just a jab, they really want feminists to be vegan. And this is why Vegfems are so fun to look at. They're the monstrous offspring of vegan and intersectional feminist rhetoric. Not too many people seem fond of them, in spite of their issue apparently fitting into the system nicely, but they want their slice of intersectional solidarity, which they believe they're entitled to for all the aforementioned reasons, and they're determined to get it. Even the Vegfem children know what the game is. Check out this pint-sized polemicist I found.
You can't consume milk and call yourself a feminist.
And why not?
In my last video, I said that many feminists are vegan, as the milk industry abuses the female reproductive system. So, in this video, I wanted to discuss how veganism is feminism, and why I think you can't call yourself a feminist without being vegan. A female cow, just like humans, can't produce milk without first being pregnant. So, the dairy farmers rape them so they can produce milk. Let me repeat, they rape cows. I guarantee you've never seen a true feminist that says rape is okay.
Once you call artificial insemination rape, as quite a few vegans do I've discovered, it's easy to connect this with feminism. But he also makes a few other interesting statements.
You can't ask for equality for one group while oppressing another and call yourself a feminist. You can't defend one type of female body while using and abusing another and call yourself a feminist. And you can't call yourself a feminist when turning someone into a commodity. What's the point of doing speeches, tweeting, or protesting for women to have equal rights when you're supporting innocent females being abused?
This kid's video exemplifies an approach to combining feminism and veganism that dodges the idea of a divide between humans and non-humans. It skips right over the idea that people might think there's a difference there. It's the most common approach I've come across, and it's not that great, because a feminist can just say, "Whoa, slow down. You can't lump humans and non-humans together just by saying they're both female." Or, you can't refer to animals as a group in the same way you would when comparing different humans, and so on. It's somewhat novel and might catch a few people out, but can be brushed away quite easily if you realise the glossing over that's going on. Having said that, there are those with more experience or education who draw slightly more sophisticated parallels in their attempt to mesh veganism with feminism.
Another consequence of cognitive dissonance is the need to victim blame. So again, this is a rationalization to help us feel comfortable with the fact that our attitudes and our behaviors are not lining up. We say we love animals, and yet we continue to hurt animals by consuming their bodies, going to zoos, going to rodeos, things like that. So if we victim blame, this can make us feel a lot better about that. So many rationalize violence against other animals as something that they deserve. Animals are stupid or ugly or vicious or pests or what have you, and that makes it okay. They deserve it if we kill them or hurt them. So this happens also with rape epidemic in the United States, really globally, with rape happening so very often. And most people don't agree that rape is okay, but we do live in a rape culture that normalizes and condones rape. So what happens is a lot of time people will just say, well, she deserved it. She shouldn't have been wearing that. She shouldn't have been drinking. She shouldn't have been out with that person. She shouldn't have done this. She deserved it. She got what she deserved. Good girls don't have that happen to them. So we see the same kind of thing with animals as a vulnerable group.
Want to tell this Vegfem that animals are different enough to humans that comparison doesn't hold up? I think that's just your human privilege talking.
We looked at in-groups and out-groups in the past. This certainly relates to our relationship with other animals. So what happens is we create and aggravate a false divide between humans and other animals. I talked about in the first lecture as well, where humans and animals actually have quite a lot in common as far as our genetics, but also our life experience. But we as humans, as a privileged group, we have this in-group bias, and we work very, very hard to make ourselves seem superior. And remember, you can't make yourself seem superior without trying to make the out-group look inferior. So otherizing a group makes oppression normal, natural, and accepted.
In fact, just like race or gender, animals, some Vegfems argue, are a social construct.
A lot of scholars and activists like me and still argue that the term animal doesn't only just refer to squirrels, pigs, and elephants, or whatever the popular idea is of what an animal is. In fact, we argue that animal is essentially a socially constructed category that's created to objectify certain bodies so that their violations and abuses are seen as normal and justified.
Sounds familiar, right? What's wrong? Don't you agree? You don't want to side with white supremacy, do you?
We shouldn't trust white supremacy telling us that animals are beneath us, because guess what? This same system says that we as black people are beneath them. Why are we siding with white supremacy when it comes to what their opinions are of animals?
Whitey has been talking the same shit about cockroaches as he does about you, and just because it's someone else, you believed it. In seriousness though, remember that guy in the cafe I showed you earlier? What this lady does in her video can be seen as a more advanced version of that, here more precisely tailored to recruit black anti-racist activists. Here's another thing I found, which I absolutely love. Some highlights of Vegfem political correctness from back in the 80s, brought to my attention while reading The Sexual Politics of Meat by Carol Adams. Liberate your language. Language is a powerful tool. The words we choose do more than name or describe things, they assign status and value. Be careful then how you choose words that refer to non-human animals, for you may be using expressions that maintain prejudices against them. Referring to a non-human animal as it strips him or her of dignity, and perpetuates the view that other animals are objects, inferior things, or property. Referring to people who share their homes and lives with non-human animals as owners or masters connotes slavery, and we should be uncomfortable with the connotation. Friends, companions, or protectors is preferable. Avoid calling other animals living things. They are living beings. I think this has to be the best microaggression I've seen. Refer to non-domestic animals as free or free roaming, not wild or wildlife. What else is there? Oh, I like these. This person covers speciesed insults, I guess you'd call them. Son of a bitch, birdbrain, and harebrain are insults at the expense of animals. Think of alternatives to calling a person a snake, turkey, ass, weasel, chicken, dog, or the like. Vegfems make satire very hard, if not impossible for me. And some modern writing is worse. From wonderful tales like, my dog gets hit on more than me, the objectification of female human and non-human bodies, to concerns over people not having an animal's consent to share pictures of their dead body, and more of these fantastic presentations. We have something special here, and not just in that way. In the Vegfems, we have a sincere reproduction and reapplication of everything we've been seeing from all of our favorite feminists, but without much of that hard shell of social pressure or media defense around it that these points normally have. There is some mainstream support, but for the most part, these arguments are left out there alone in the cold, like seals waiting to be clubbed. So, next time you're looking for something to sink your teeth into, try Vegfems, the other intersectional meat.